Please lock the cage doors at this time.
Cage! What? Hey, what is this? I didn't sign up for a cage match. Hey, unlock the thing. Take the chain off.
Rickso, you're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime. What are you doing up there?
Staying away from you. That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
There he is again, folks. The terrifying, the deadly, the amazing Spider-Man.
My name's the Human Spider. You got my movie wrong.
3 minutes.
That's my uncle. Uncle Ben.
Here. I'm sorry. I was food poisoned by my own rice.
Spider-Man. This is why only fools are heroes, because you never know when some horny lunatic will come along with a sadistic choice. Let the woman you love. Save me. Or suffer the little children. Spider-Man, save us! Save us! Make your choice, Spider-Man, and see how a prostitute is awarded. No, don't do it, Goblin.
We are who we choose to be, so choose.
MJ, I need you to climb down. Oh, I can. Yes, you can. I'm all webbed out. Don't make me look ugly. That's impossible.
Sleep.
Hello everybody and welcome to my review of the 2002 live-action film Spider-Man. Directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco and Willem Dafoe, and many more. So, Spider-Man. With the release of the upcoming Spider-Man Homecoming to star Tom Holland, I'm going to go back and review all 5 Spider-Man movies, and I'm going to review Spider-Man Homecoming when that comes out, and then I'm going to rank all 6 movies together in my order of personal preference. So, Spider-Man. Okay, so the basic plot of Spider-Man is that it centers around this young, sort of teenage-looking, in this case he looks more like a young adult, young teenager named Peter Parker. He's a bit of a nerd, he's a bit of a recluse, he's kind of shy. He doesn't really socialize with other people. He has a friend, Harry Osborn, but he's a bit awkward. He has a major crush on this girl called Mary Jane Watson. And one day on a field trip, when he's taking photos for the school paper in the science lab where they go to visit, a radioactive spider scurries down and bites him on the hand, and he develops these superpowers and he becomes the superhero known as Spider-Man. Along the way, his uncle dies, and that is what drives him to basically take revenge and then save the world from the crime. And meanwhile, you have his friend Harry Osborn, who is also the rival of affection for Mary Jane. They both really like her, and they're both trying to win her over. His father, Norman Osborn, is the head of Oscorp, and his company is failing. He's in desperate need of, a miracle, really. So he decides to destroy. I can't remember the name of the other company. I can't remember what it's called, but he destroys the facilities of the other company to try and keep his company running. And he develops a bit of a mental problem with this alter ego known as the Green Goblin, and it consumes him to the point where he becomes mad and he becomes a supervillain. And it goes on from there, really. Peter has to kind of essentially grow up. It's a coming-of-age story, and he has to sort of find out who he is, and he has to become the man he's supposed to be. And that's really it. That's Spider-Man. Spider-Man. This movie I've always had a great love and affection for. This came out when I was about 5 years old. I can't remember if I saw it in the cinema. I don't believe I did. But this is a really good movie. This is really, really good. I really like this film. And I think this movie tends to get a lot more appreciation now after the recent disappointments of the reboots. I think Sam Raimi got it right here. You can tell there is a great love and a great respect for the source material in this movie. Yes, it's cheesy and it's lighthearted, but does every superhero movie have to be fucking dark and depressing? I mean, I'm all for The Dark Knight and what it did, and it was fantastic for what it did. But for me, let's have a bit of fun sometimes. I mean, this movie isn't without its serious moments. It has its emotional moments and it has its serious moments, but when it comes down to it, it's a homage to the comics. It's basically the comics that have come to life. It is camp in a way, but not to the extent of the third movie or or the second film, or even the Adam West Batman stuff. Like any of those, there's no pow, zap, boom. There's none of that. There's straight up action across the board. But there's light heart, and there's charm, and there's humour as well when the occasion warrants it. And I really love the story. I think it's a fantastic story. It's the coming of age story. The Amazing Spider-Man, not a patch on this whatsoever. He didn't tell the story nearly as well. And I think this movie succeeds on almost every level. I mean, I think what I love about it is like I said, the idea that it's a coming of age story. It's about Peter growing up and finding his identity and realizing his responsibility in the world. And the death of his uncle is obviously a sort of the first time he's really experiencing the real world, because he's an intelligent guy. He's a science whiz, so he's clever, and he's also a very good photographer as well. Let's talk about Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire as Peter / Spider-Man. I think he's perfect for the role. I'm sorry, I think he's absolutely brilliant. For me, he's the best of the three Spider-Mans that we've got so far. Maybe I'm saying that out of blind nostalgia because I grew up with this trilogy, but you know what? I don't care, because at the end of the day, he encapsulates the character perfectly, and he plays it the way it should be played. As a nerd. I mean, okay, as Spider-Man, he could have been a bit more quippy, but that's just a minor thing. I still thought he did fantastically for both parts. And, there is a clear distinction between Peter and Spider-Man. With Andrew Garfield, there is no distinction between Peter and Spider-Man. As for Tom Holland, we'll get to him in his new film when we see that. But I think Maguire nailed it. I really think he did. He got sort of the awkward nerdiness very well. And when the emotional scene, the aftermath of Uncle Ben's death, that hit really well. There's a really fantastic scene when he's in his room and he's crying, and his aunt comes up to him and says, he would have been proud of you and all of that sort of stuff. And, there's a great underlying message. I love the scene in the car between Peter and Uncle Ben when he says, just be careful who you change into. With great power comes great responsibility. And that's a perfect message because, you know, at some point in our lives, we all have to accept some kind of responsibility. And, you know, Peter really finds his feet in the world and he finds out who he is and, you know, Spider-Man. And I think it's a fantastic drama as well. As well as this movie being a superhero movie, the drama's always grounded in art. That's what I love about these movies, is that Sam Raimi knows how to, he understands the blend of drama and the action. When the action hits, it's fantastic. You have some epic scenes, like the Macy Gray scene or the parade attack. That's really awesome. The, what do you call it? The chase, when Peter is chasing after the carjacker, otherwise known as Dennis Carradine, which we find out in number 3. And also the climax is epic on the bridge when Peter has to choose to save Mary Jane or the kids in the cable car. And there's a fantastic shot when you see the reflection of both of them in each of his eyes of his mask. I love that shot. That has always stood out to me. There's a lot of emotional impact from this film. And I like that very much. Tobey Maguire, absolutely perfect. Nailed it. Yeah, very good. Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. Now, if I had to point out a weak aspect of this movie, it would probably have to be Mary Jane. It's not Kirsten Dunst. The performance is fine. I like Kirsten Dunst. She did a good job. It's the writing, the way they wrote the character. She appears to be, whether this was the intention of the writers, I don't know, but she appears to come across as a bit of a bitch. Yeah, she's a bit of a bitch and a bit of a gold digger. Like, she's going out with all these different men. Like, you know, she's going from one man to the next. You know, she's with Flash at the beginning, and then she's with Harry. And, you know, Norman says, oh, she's just after the money, so, you know, she doesn't love you, she doesn't care. And, you know what? He's got a point. Every time you see MJ and Harry together in this movie, there's always awkward tension. She doesn't let him kiss her, and also there's moments when they don't speak and it's very awkward. There's just awkward conversation. So it's very clear to see that, yep, she's after the money. Whilst I kind of like her relationship with Peter, you know, how she slowly realises that he is the man who's been there for her the whole time, you know, staring her in the face, and, you know, so that's nice. In the end of the film, you feel fucking happy for Peter because he finally gets this girl that he's wanted for so long. This movie isn't perfect. I mean, the problems, like I said, Mary Jane, the writing for Mary Jane is always a problem, and unfortunately that continues throughout the trilogy. Also, like the school scenes. Why does everybody look fucking 25? What? Was it so hard to cast people that looked younger? Like, what? It just doesn't look right. It looks really out of place. I'm okay with having the school scenes in there, obviously, because that's where the story begins, when Peter's a young boy, when he's a teenager. Technically, Maguire and Kirsten Dunst and James Franco are all too old for the roles, so I guess it was really to match their ages, but even so, like, what? Like, it doesn't look realistic, and it really took me out of the film, so that's the thing I'm going to mark the movie down for. Speaking of which, James Franco as Harry, I think he's really good in this movie. It's not his best performance, that's still yet to come, but he's pretty good for what he has in this movie. He doesn't have many scenes, but he's good, and you can see that he's very jealous of Peter when you know, there's the scene in the hospital when Peter basically sort of unknowingly to her confesses his love through the disguise of him as Spider-Man, basically confessing his love for her to him, and then they hold hands, and then Harry comes in. It's like, oh, okay. So there's obviously throughout the trilogy there's even more tension between Peter and Harry. Willem Dafoe is fucking fantastic as the Green Goblin. He nailed this part. I mean, he plays it like a pantomime villain, but it actually really works. I mean, the whole distinction between Norman and the Green Goblin is very much apparent here. I mean, people compare this to Gollum, and yeah, I can see why. It is very much like that. But this was released before the Two Towers, but I think it works fine, and it works really well. And like when he puts on this really creepy voice, like, I'm the Green Goblin. When he starts singing, the incy wincy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the goblin and took the spider out. I mean, he's just wonderfully creepy. And as Norman, he's also very good too. How he tries to appear like a really nice, the next father figure for Peter after Uncle Ben passes away, but how he's consumed by the goblin, the force of the goblin, is really quite sinister. Or another action scene I forgot to mention is the burning building scene. That's a really cool scene when Peter rescues the baby. And then he goes back in and he has a fight with the Green Goblin. It's a brief fight, but it's quite cool. It's nice to see that. Yeah, I mean, Norman's an interesting character because he goes on a journey. He has all this wealth and sort of fortune, but yet he loses nearly all of it. And, you know, yeah, he's consumed by his alter ego. And the Thanksgiving scene is... I always love that. There's this underlying moment of tension. I've always loved this bit. When Aunt May slaps his hand, she says, Norman, will you do the honors? And he's like, he licks his finger and he strokes the knives against each other and he goes, like with a really sinister smile. I've always liked that bit. That's just great. Speaking of which, Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Yeah, Cliff Robertson and Rosemary Harris. For me, they are the best Aunt May and Uncle Ben we've had so far. They are just wonderful. They're a wonderful on-screen couple. They really are. They have such charm, such chemistry. They seem like lovely people in real life. I mean, there's a wonderful... You feel sort of a homely, warm sense around them. There's a warmness. I mean, Aunt May will go on in the next two movies, obviously, because she doesn't die. There's a moment where she gets attacked and she has a shock, but she doesn't die as such. And she survives throughout the trilogy. And, you know, she has some wonderful scenes in the next two as well. But for this movie, she's very good. How she comforts Peter during his time of emotional distress. And also her chemistry with Cliff Robertson is nice. How they're a married couple and, you know, that's really nice. And he's good. He's not in the movie very much because he dies quite early on. But he's wonderful in the role. He really is. And he's trying to be that father figure for Peter, and that's an interesting thing. When the movie closes, Peter says, I have a father, his name is Ben Parker. And, you know, I'm sure if he got the chance, he would love to change the grave to beloved husband and father. You know, I mean, in this trilogy, there's never any reveal about what happens to Peter's parents, but to be honest, I don't think it's at all necessary whatsoever. It wouldn't have made the film any different, to be honest. I just assume that his parents are dead. You know, that's what I assume from this, that his parents are dead and he's living with his aunt and uncle. It's easy enough. You don't need to make a whole big convoluted subplot like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, cough. But yes, also the direction by Sam Raimi is spot on. You know, he keeps the film grounded. There's a real world sense about this. They're real people with real lives. You know, they're trying to find jobs. They're just graduated. You know, they're struggling with life. You know, emotionally and physically. You know, Mary Jane has aspirations. She wants to be an actress and everything, and she's down on her luck. She's working in diners, and Peter's, you know, getting jobs in photography. He's also trying to juggle his life as Spider-Man as well. Harry's trying to you know, help his father and stuff, and then, you know, the very end of the movie is quite sad, obviously, when Norman kills himself accidentally with the glider, and Harry then vows revenge on Spider-Man, and obviously that's a little bit awkward. And of course, that, you know, we have quite a few deaths in this movie. We do. Sam Raimi definitely directed this film really well, and he was the right choice to direct it. The music score by Danny Elfman is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, wow, the score is amazing. I mean, the opening theme, the it's so epic. It's so good. I mean, the entire score for this as well. I love the score for the scene when he's designing his costume. And also the score for the scene when he's chasing after the carjacker. which is brilliant. And for the softer moments as well, the score for the romantic stuff is really, really good as well. The film is 2 hours long, which is absolutely perfect. The pacing is perfect. It never drags. It never feels too long. It doesn't feel too short either. I think it's just right. It's a really good ride. My only real criticisms are, like I said, Mary Jane. She's a bit of a bitch. she's not written the best. The performance I like, but the character, not so much. I also think that the title sequence at the very beginning, it does go on way too long. It is a great sequence, but it's like over 3 minutes. It's like, come on guys, let's just start the movie now. And also, some of the CGI is a little bit dated, but that's just natural wear and tear, really. And, you know, other than that, I don't really have many complaints with this film at all. I think it's near enough perfect, and I love all the cast, and they do a superb job. Also, how can I not mention J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson? He's hilarious. He's really funny. I love this guy. He's the perfect choice. I mean, if they ever, you know, go to the Daily Bugle with Tom Holland, I want them to bring back J.K. Simmons, because he's perfect for this role. He's so funny, and he just fits it so well. Oh, and the CGI for its time is good. It's starting to date now, but it is good. And yeah, it's just like I said, the problems for me are in the school scene as well, that the students look too old to be there, too long for the title sequence, and the Mary Jane character isn't written very well. But other than that, this movie is really, really good. It's so much fun. I love the ending scene in the funeral of Norman Osborn, when MJ finally confesses her love for him, but he turns her down. He says, I can't be with you, I can only be your friend, which is surprising, and obviously she recognises his kiss, but yeah, she seems to forget about it until the end of Spider-Man 2, but we'll get to that later. So, overall, I really love Spider-Man, and I am going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. Yeah, so that's my review of the first Spider-Man movie, directed by Sam Raimi. Now we move on to the middle part of the Sam Raimi trilogy, Spider-Man 2, released in 2004. So, until my review for that, guys, thank you all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See ya.